I had made up my mind. It was time to reveal to the world what had transpired with a relentless sociopath who had dared to cross paths with our tight-knit neighborhood. To set the stage, I resided in a sizable yet not overly expansive city known as Palmville. My home was situated near the corner of a bustling suburb nestled between crowded apartment buildings, a river emitting a pungent diesel odor during low tide, and two busy highways. Being a minority in this neighborhood, I often faced prejudice and animosity due to my ethnicity. However, despite a few clashes between families resulting in physical altercations, enough of our neighbors accepted us, creating a sense of safety when venturing outside our abode. It was an arduous neighborhood, but it was our sanctuary, a place that fiercely protected its own. The community center held a significant role akin to that of a temple, with Amy serving as the esteemed priestess. In our neighborhood, she commanded immense respect, exuding a calm and empathetic demeanor that mirrored her elevated status. I had never witnessed her deviate from a strong moral code. Now, let me introduce our former landlord, an Asian woman of short stature who embodied the stereotypical traits associated with her ethnicity. Kindness and sweetness radiated from her. Our house exceeded what my parents could afford, and she recognized this. She went above and beyond, helping tenants struggling financially by assigning them repair and maintenance jobs. She compensated them by deducting amounts from their rent, often exceeding the actual value of their work. In hindsight, such practices may have been legally questionable, but they are inconsequential to this story since her death, under suspicious circumstances, does not directly impact the events that follow. Her sons, who had no interest in real estate, assumed control of the business following her passing. Unable to decipher how she had managed to navigate the precarious financial landscape, with numerous accounts steeped in red ink, they decided to unload properties, including ours. I bear no ill will towards them and genuinely wish them success. However, the individual who purchased our house, a sociopath, emerges as a key figure in today's tale. This man wasted no time in turning our lives into a living nightmare. His initial act of cruelty involved a sudden rent increase. Apparently, when the ownership transferred, he gained the authority to adjust the rent to match current market rates. We had been residing there for several years, paying below market prices from the beginning, so this unexpected blow dealt a severe blow to our finances. The second blow came when he declared that rent must be paid in full by the first day of each month. No partial payments, no negotiations for reductions, and no extensions granted. Failure to meet this strict deadline would result in an eviction notice by the second day. Our savings were rapidly depleting, but we managed to scrape by, albeit with great difficulty for the time being. Meanwhile, Amy had tirelessly campaigned for the city to co-fund a revitalization project aimed at renovating the entire dilapidated suburb, and her efforts paid off. One street at a time, a procession of work trucks filled the neighborhood on a daily basis, addressing various issues like leaky pipes, sinkholes, fences, and rejuvenating paint. It was a remarkable transformation that captivated everyone's attention, including the sociopath. Since our house was located on the outskirts of the neighborhood, it was slated for renovation last, and the sociopath wanted us out so he could relist the property once the renovations were complete. Though he never explicitly stated his intentions, multiple conversations left no doubt, even for my 10-year-old self. He resorted to random inspections, exaggerating minor house problems, and even went as far as attempting to falsely accuse us of animal abuse because our cat had been attacked, most likely by a raccoon. Absurdly, he tried to claim that we had inflicted the injuries ourselves, as if a veterinarian couldn't differentiate between knife wounds and an animal mauling. We could see the writing on the wall and started making preparations to move. We decided to relocate and live with my eldest brother in a place I'll refer to as Banjalan. Most of us had already moved, except for my other brother, who chose to stay behind due to his strong social connections in Palmville, and his new job provided just enough income to meet the sociopath's inflated bills if he cut corners. However, despite his best efforts, my brother came up $20 short 1 month, and the sociopath seized the opportunity. He gave us a 30-day notice. So we made the 400-mile trip from Banjolan to Palmville to gather the remainder of our belongings. I couldn't say I approved of my brother's living conditions, but that's inconsequential to the story. The month passed without any major incidents, as if the sociopath believed he had already emerged victorious and had no need to waste fuel on gloating visits. Word had spread throughout the neighborhood about what was transpiring, and for the first time ever, upon my return, I encountered no confrontations, no hostile glares, no racist remarks. Everyone conducted themselves with a solemn demeanor, which, to be honest, felt somewhat eerie. I suppose those in lower income brackets were all too familiar with the looming threat of eviction and recognized that I was already going through a difficult time. 20 days later, the sociopath declared it was time for us to leave. Although we still had a week remaining, we lacked the funds to mount a legal fight. Amy, like a guardian angel, intervened and managed to secure us a couple of extra days. Nevertheless, it was evident that the sociopath was determined to drive us out, perhaps because the work trucks were now just one street away from our house. The last glimpse I caught of the home I had grown up in was witnessing workers carelessly tossing my childhood possessions into a large bin, even though we technically had 3 more days before we had to vacate. What follows is a collection of information I acquired through grapevine conversations and phone calls with individuals present during the events. Without delay, the sociopath promptly moved into the house himself, wondering why. Well, here's the answer. Those who owned their homes were entitled to receive full cost coverage for renovations as determined by the city. The sociopath cunningly realized that by residing in the house, which he had purchased at a bargain during liquidation, he could have it renovated for free and subsequently flip it for a profit. However, Amy was not one to be trifled with. She made it abundantly clear to him that when the revival project was approved, the house had been classified as a rental property and the budget couldn't be altered now. Furthermore, she clarified that the partial cost coverage approved for the property was in our name, not his, rendering him ineligible for any financial compensation. He would have to foot the entire bill himself. Since the entire neighborhood was undergoing a transformation, he was required to renovate the exterior at the very least. Failure to comply would result in the house being condemned due to its unsightly appearance or deteriorating condition, whatever the appropriate legal term may be. In a bid to save money, he cut corners during the renovations, opting for new carpets and a fresh coat of paint, a decision that would later come back to haunt him. Undeterred, he proceeded to earnestly try to sell the house. However, the neighborhood hadn't forgotten his actions. Instances of vandalism occurred when the property was unoccupied, while neighboring residents made sure to create disruptive noise during house viewings. Additionally, whenever potential buyers sought opinions from the community, they were met with disdainful glares and unwelcoming responses. The neighborhood made it virtually impossible for him to sell the house at its market value. After enduring 3 months of these tactics, the sociopath reluctantly lowered the listing price. A month later, he made another reduction, finally attracting a potential buyer. Amy, taking matters into her own hands, made sure that every single piece of paperwork was meticulously filed before the property changed hands. Furthermore, the entire house underwent thorough inspections, and that's when karma itself caught up with him. Due to his rushed and shoddy renovations, the pipes had somehow sustained damage, resulting in the emergence of insidious black mold. Amy, bearing in mind his past treatment of us, decided to exact her revenge. I never learned the exact details of her scheme, but she managed to delay the sociopath's receipt of the news about the black mold discovery for several days. By the time he finally learned of the situation, there wasn't enough time left to arrange for cleaning or make any last-ditch efforts to salvage the house. Within days, the house was condemned. In a final act of retribution, Amy and members of the neighborhood filed numerous complaints and injunctions, compelling the city to order the sociopath to demolish the house immediately. He was forced to bear the cost out of his own pocket. He had attempted to ruin a family and had violated laws all for the sake of quick cash. Instead, he found himself entangled in a year-long legal battle and incurred significant financial losses. The neighborhood remembers. The neighborhood enforces justice. So a friend and I moved into this newly renovated apartment in Brooklyn. It's nice enough, but just about every one of the 14 units has some sort of weird problem. One unit had the hot and cold water mixed up, flush a few times, and get a heated toilet. One unit, none of the outlets are grounded. One unit, there are gaps around the windows. The problem in our unit was a leak in the air conditioner lines. The leak was probably at the roof, but we ended up with no AC. We call them, and it takes a month to get someone. He refills the lines, and a week later, the problem comes back. We spend the summer getting the system topped up every week. At the end of the summer, they decided that our repairs, and all of the neighbors, were getting too expensive, so they sent us bills. Our bill was in the tens of thousands of dollars. Recharging that system weekly must have been expensive. They also start trying to charge every unit for any infraction, like $100 for every unit for a single scrap of paper found in a hall. The tenants all get together to have a little meeting. It turns out that they never got a certificate of occupancy for the building. The city had it on the books as a furniture warehouse. So, collectively, we all just stop paying them. Rent, fines, fees, nothing. We retain a lawyer and just live there. The company tried to get us out by cutting power and other services. We contacted the lawyer, the company would get fined, and we'd get our power back. They tried to change the main lock once, but we let the locksmith know what was going on, so he stopped. They didn't try it a second time. The first floor of the building was an off-track betting parlor. They were particularly noisy and obnoxious, so one resident called the health department over a moldy loaf of bread we found in the basement. One of my best memories was watching a bunch of guys in hazmat suits clear out the betting parlor so they could run tests. Eventually, they tried to get the certs, but to do that, they need to do inspections with the drywall removed. They tried to do it while we lived there, and the lawyer fought it for not being in a livable state. Finally, they realized they needed us out. If they got the CAFO while we were still there, we'd owe back rent. They'd take us to court to get evictions. Lawyer gets everything pushed back as far as he can, but finally we go to city court. Lawyer points out that they're trying to evict 14 units, but you can't evict more than 10 at a time. Court rejected the case. I don't think their lawyer gets a single word in. So now we get a county court date for an ejection instead of an eviction. Again, the lawyer pushes it out as much as he can, but eventually we go. Court agrees to eject us all, but sees the evidence of lighting and lock tampering, and asks our lawyer what would be a reasonable time frame. Lawyer asks for 4 months. Judge gives us 6. Everyone stays until the last month. At the end of it all, we got to live in a newly renovated apartment in a trendy area of Brooklyn for free for a little over a year. My local council received funding to build a segregated cycle route along a road that had seen several cycling fatalities. It's a huge improvement, however, it has become more dangerous again due to at least 50 streetlights being dotted along its length. There's a lot of shops, parked cars, pedestrians, bus stops, and vehicles turning along this road, and you need to be ready to brake at all times. Late one night, a woman dressed in black in one of these unlit areas walked out in front of me. I managed to evade but fell off my bike into the main road in the process. Everyone was okay, but enough was enough. I tried to report the overall issue to the council, but they said they would need precise location, plotted on a digital map via their clunky website, and streetlight number printed on the light column of every light to report to their subcontractor. The road runs through an area known for muggings, and even cyclists get pushed off to steal their bikes, so I didn't want to stop at each light with a phone out or even a notebook. So since the start of 2022, each trip I've tried to remember 1 or 2 lights that have failed with their precise location and numbers, then reporting when I get home. I had reached 13 individual reports so far this year when a man from the council called me yesterday. We discussed the situation, and upon hearing there were tens more reports yet to come, asked if I could please give them 4 weeks grace before sending more reports, and they will check and fix every light along the cycle route.